There is, this whole chapter is a chiasm, and I'm not gonna map all that out and show it. Um, I've, I know I've got an article out there, and I might even have a video about it somewhere, but there is a little chiasm that I wanted to point out because it was really kind of cool. If you've done the chiasm course, I showed how when you're doing a small chiasm that just spans a verse or two, that sometimes you have to look at the Hebrew word order to make sure that it's really a chiasm, because the smaller the chiasm, the more important the word order becomes. So I looked at these at verses 7 through 9, because just in the English Standard Version, it looks like there's a chiasm there, and you could kind of map it out, maybe a couple of parallelisms formed into a chiasm. So I went and looked at the Hebrew words to see what the exact word order, and it's actually much better than I expected it to be. So in verse 7, this is rearranged so that it's in the same word order as the Hebrew. Verse 7 starts out, the instructor of a scorner takes shame. So you instruct a scorner, you get shame back. And at the bottom, at the end of verse 9, if you inform the righteous, he gives learning. So you give information to the righteous, you get information back. Back in verse 7, a reprover of the wicked gets a blemish. And in verse 9, give to the wise and his wisdom grows. So you're starting to see a pattern in the way that the fool and the wise person respond to instruction. The fool throws things back at you. The wise person takes it in and grows it, makes it bigger, and maybe gives it back to you, maybe gives it to other people, but he gives it away anyways. And then in verse 8, do not reprove a scorner lest he hate you. Reprove the wise and he will love you. And this is all about obviously in the English, it's about the response of the foolish person and the wise person to instruction. But the defining characteristic here seems to be that the fool throws it back at you, uses your words as a weapon, or somehow tries to do damage to you in response. Whether he tries to or not, that's the end result. Whereas the wise person takes what you're giving him, makes it a part of himself, and does something with it. Gives it back to you, gives it to other people, but he makes it bigger. It's kind of like the parable of the talents, where the foolish servant buried his, didn't do anything with it. The wise servant took his, took some risks, made it grow, and gave something back. But this really only came out that clearly once you looked at, the more precise word order in the Hebrew. One of the things that this made me think of, this do not reprove a scorner lest he hate you, and, but reprove the wise and he'll love you, made me think of compulsory homogeneous education. Sometimes, at the very top and at the very bottom, you'll segregate people so that, the very smartest people will be separate here in some areas. The very lowest category will be separate in some other area. But for the most part, everybody's all lumped together. The people who don't want to be there with the people who do want to be there. This isn't really helping anybody, because the people who don't want to be there, they don't need this education. They need a different kind of education, one that's going to make them want to be there. And you're never going to get there by just making them sit in their chair and, giving them detention or whatever it is they do in schools these days. And forcing the kids who want to be there and learn, forcing them to sit there with the kids who don't want to learn, is going to drag them down. They're going to be influenced by that attitude. They're constantly exposed to foolish people saying and offering foolish things. Eventually they're going to give in, and they're going to be pulled in that direction. They may not end up in the same place. They're still going to end up in a better place, when they're done with school. But they could have been so much further ahead if they just had not been put in this cookie cutter, homogenized industrial blender.
Yeah, they even do. It's even worse sometimes. They have if they do like separate tables, they all these smart kids that want to really learn, all obviously they all want to bundle together,
Mm-hmm.
so they split them up, and then put, the worst kid with the best kid, and then kind of fill in the middle, and the idea is to elevate, those kids here at the bottom all the way to the top. And
yeah, and sometimes I'm sure that works.
I think that makes sense, but there's a difference between, a kid being here at the bottom and wanting to learn, and a kid being here at the bottom and not wanting to learn. That's a difference, because I think that the kid that's at the top and the kid at the bottom that wants to learn, there is a benefit to them, because the kid at the top, it teaches him to be a leader and teaches him how to teach, and you learn things better by teaching, right? So it works. But if the kid at the bottom is just distracting, then that's the fool, and that's the scoffer right there.
It just blows the whole
brings
system.
everybody down.